Okay, so let's get started with this. What we are trying to achieve here is understand how we can make a full stack application end to end, where we think about how we design the application and then we take into account the individual pieces and we put them all together, and all of that would result in a web application which is interactive where a user can log in and do things, and then at the very end we will understand how we can host this into a git repository, which is where you share your code with your team, and then finally we are going to go through uh, the deployment part of the things as to how to deploy the back end and the front end and the individual pieces. Now, there are a few assumptions inside of this masterclass. Uh, so, there are prerequisites. You should have some sound understanding of how we browse the web basically. So if you open up a website, what happens there? Uh, how is data moving between pages? How is data moving between the back end and the front end? Now, I'm going to go through those parts very quickly, and then there are all the components which we are going to discuss. One of them is the database, one of them is the APIs, and then we have the UI, and we'll have the code editor in which we'll code in. We'll have Git, we'll have the deployment, we'll be deploying this into a place. And then there are a few libraries that we're going to use along the way. Now, for the masterclass, I've tried to keep the number of libraries as minimal as possible because I want you to understand how things work at the lowest level. So this session is being recorded, and Ananta, I'm going to go through everything step by step so that you can understand what is happening. So there's no prerequisite knowledge of backend required here because everything will be covered. Some knowledge about how HTTP works, how HTML works is going to be sufficient here. So we are going to go through what we are building here. So I have the diagram on the screen right now, and then we are going to go through each of the components that we are going to use. Now, everything that I'm using, I will put the references to those in the chat so you can take a look at it by yourself as well. And if you want, you can follow along. So let's get started with what we are trying to build today. So this is a simple application where anyone can log in and then post content. And a post will look something like this. It will have some text. It will be by a person or an account, and we will record the time at which the post was created. If I've edited the post, then I'll show like an edited label, and I will put in buttons to either comment on this or edit this post or delete the post. Okay, so this is a post. Now, one post can have comments, and then in Reddit, what we see is that even comments can have more comments, right? So if I if someone creates a comment onto my post, then they appear as direct comments to my post, and now I can comment on this comment as well, which becomes a nested comment, which means that this comment is not part of the original post, but it is a part of this comment. So this can go on for as long as required, and this can be any levels deep, the number of comments. What we are going to do is we are going to see a very simple way in which we can achieve this kind of complexity. So we're going to first start off with the components that we're going to use. Now, one of them is the database. Now, for this masterclass, we are going to use MongoDB. I will zoom in a bit. So MongoDB is a database which is going to save all of our information that is used in this application. So MongoDB is basically an unstructured database, meaning that we don't need to uh, have a structure in which we save our data. We can save any data that we want in any shape that we want. Now, we in MongoDB we have a database server. So a server is a machine that runs the application, and within this server we can have multiple databases. So a database is basically a unit which stores all of the relevant information together, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to create a database, and then within that database we are going to create something called as collections. So collections are basically sets of documents. Now, one document is basically one record in our database. So think of it as a file. It's a regular file which has all of the data that we need, and we can have multiple such files. One file corresponds to one unit of data or information, and multiple files correspond to a collection. So collection is synonymous to folders in your computers. Now we are going to create folders or collections for all the posts, and we are going to create a folder or collection for users. So in our application, a user can register or log in, and they can create a post, and they can comment on posts, right? So that's why we have these two separate entities, users and posts, and we're going to keep two separate collections for these. So we need to create one database. We need to create two collections inside them, and then within those collections, we can have as many documents as we want. Each document would correspond to each post. So if you look at this, this is going to be a document. This is going to be a document. This is also going to be a document. And then in a separate collection, Pranjal and Tutor would be two documents. Okay. So there are many ways in which you can use MongoDB. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a free database that is hosted onto the cloud. There's also a way in which you can locally run MongoDB inside your computer. And for that, you can download the MongoDB server application, and that can run on your computer. So to do that, you would land in the MongoDB website. I'm going to put that onto the chat. Just confirming if everyone is able to hear me properly. Okay. Okay, I see majority of you can hear me. So for the ones who cannot hear me, I'll write it on the chat. Okay, so I've pasted the link to the MongoDB website onto the chat. And what you can do is you can go to products, and you can go to community server. Okay, so or you can go to community edition as well, which will list out all of the things. So the MongoDB community server is the application that you can run either on your machine or on a machine that you've hosted onto the cloud. So you can do that. So take community server, select the package, and over here select the version you want to use. The current version is the most stable version and the latest one. The platform, which is what kind of operating system you're using, and what kind of package. So if you are, for example, using Windows, then you can select between MSI and zip, and then you can click on download. This is going to download the software into your computer. You have to go through the setup to basically install the server. Once you've installed the server, now the next thing that you're going to need is a client software, which is also GUI. So for the GUI, what you can do is you can go to Compass. So there are various tools that are available. Now, Compass is a very easy to use software which basically is going to give you a GUI of your database. Now, Compass should run along with the server. So both of them should run if you're running this on your local machine. If you're running a machine that is on the cloud, just like how I will do in some time, then you just need to run Compass. There is MongoDB shell if you're more into command line. So this helps you with running MongoDB on the command line. There are extensions for editors, and then there is Atlas, which is like a online version of the uh, GUI. So Atlas runs online, and MongoDB Compass will run locally on your computer. And then there are language-specific tools available. So I'm going to use MongoDB Compass in this particular course. So installing Compass is basically similar to installing the server. You're going to download now, and you're going to select the platform. You're going to select the other options, the version and platform and the package, and then you're going to download it. And you have to go through the setup for this. So I'm going to show you how MongoDB Compass looks like when it is installed. So this is how the application will look like. You will have a place for new connection and a place for putting the URI. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to create a database onto the MongoDB cloud, and then I'm going to connect that into my MongoDB Compass. So to do that, I'll have to first sign into MongoDB. Now I'm going to sign in through Google. Now there are more steps that you'll see when you sign in for the first time. It is going to ask you a few questions. I've already created an account, so I'm directly taken to this page, which is the overview page. Okay. Now in the overview page, I need to create a deployment. So a deployment is basically a server that is available on the cloud. So I'm going to go ahead with that. Now I'll select the free tier, and you can also select the free tier here. And I'm going to select the region as Mumbai, which is the closest AWS region to all of us. You can select any other region if you are joining from outside of India. And what I'm going to name this is social website. So social website will be the name of my deployment. So I'm going to click create here, and it is going to create the database for me. Now I'm getting a few settings here. So this is giving me a username. So let me actually copy paste these. Now when the server is created, this is going to give you a URL which we are going to fill in later. Uh, so if you're on East Africa, then you can choose. Okay, you can choose a server that's closest to you. Um, it's always good to have a server that's close to you so that the speed of every request is fast enough. Is that okay? So I'm going to go to advanced options, and I'm going to go to authentication, and I'm going to select username and password. I'm going to set username as the username that I've been given. I'm going to set the password as the password that I've been given. And with this, I'm ready with the username and password. And MongoDB is only going to allow connections from whitelisted IP addresses. So I'm going to add my current IP address. So now from my local computer, I can access the uh, MongoDB database. So I think I filled everything. Oh, I have to create user here. So uh, I've copied the details and I've created the user now. So now it is going to allow me to go ahead and create the database. So I'll finish, and a small congratulatory message. So now I can connect, and I'm going to select Compass here, and I'm going to select that I have MongoDB Compass installed. The version is the latest one. So now I have MongoDB plus SRV. So I will be doing that. And the name and password are already available. All I need to do is copy the rest of the things. Okay. So I've copied the whole thing along with my username and password. Now I can go ahead and click on connect. So I can see now that I'm able to see my databases here. So the connection has been successful. Now I can go ahead and create databases, collections, documents from here. So do any of you have any questions on the process of creating a database? So, Mithun, the URI would be this URI. If you are copying and pasting your username and password somewhere else, then you can directly copy paste this URI and replace your username and password. So, uh, this is done. And the next thing that we need to do is set up our API server. So, I'm going to, okay, so I'll do a quick review. We have used MongoDB to create a database on the cloud, which is the simplest way to create the database. You also have options to run it locally, so you can take a look at it offline. Now, you will need a GUI to run the MongoDB server so that you can understand what is going on. Now, MongoDB Compass is a GUI that has been created from the same team, so you can install that. And this was the process where I went on to create a database. I had to create a user, I had to whitelist my IP address, and the database got created. Upon creation of the database, I clicked on connect, and I have mentioned that I am going to use MongoDB Compass, and I've mentioned that I already have it installed. So this is going to give me a connection string that I can put here directly. And putting the username and password is going to help me authenticate, and I can finally log in. So this is done. I can now proceed. So all of our work on this particular thing is done. Our database is live, and our database server is live. We are going to now create a database. So this is the database that we're going to use for our application. We can give it any name we want. I'm going to give it a name of application. So the first collection that should be there here is users. Okay, and there's nothing else that needs to be done. I can go ahead and create the database. So yes, Mithun, we are going to run the database on cloud, and we are going to access that database inside of MongoDB Compass. Now, this is just a GUI to help you visualize what is happening in the database. For our server, we are going to run a library which is going to help us with a MongoDB connection as well as our uh, communication between the server and the database. Okay, so now that we have our database set up application, we are now going to go and create a new project for our API. So there are prerequisites for the project. First of all, you need to have Node.js installed. So this is the website for Node.js. Node.js is a program that lets us run JavaScript as an application on our machine. So we can run this on our local machine, we can run this on cloud instance, we can run this anywhere. And what we are going to do is we are going to write our application and use and run it using Node.js. Okay, so when you install Node.js, you get two things. You will get the Node.js runtime, and you'll get the npm, which is the Node package manager. So Node package manager is our manager for all the dependencies or libraries that we are going to use. So we are going to make use of both of them. We are going to use the Node.js runtime to run the server, and we are going to use the package manager to install packages or libraries or dependencies. Okay, so I already have this installed in my system, and what I'm going to do next is I'm going to use my editor. So I use VS Code or Visual Studio Code. This is an editor from Microsoft, and it is a very powerful IDE. I'm going to link it into the chat. Now you can download this. It's very simple to download and install. Once you are done with it, I'm going to now open up VS Code and then create a new project, so you can understand how you can create a new project in VS Code. So when you open up VS Code, this is what you see. This is the first screen, and over here, what you can do is you can open a command line. So opening command line for Mac is control and tilde symbol. You can look at the command for your own operating system. Uh, you can just Google search for how to open command line on VS Code for Windows or Mac or Linux, whatever you use it. So I'm going to create a new folder for the project, and I'm going to call this as Reddit clone. And within Reddit clone, now I'm going to do something called as npm init. So npm init is going to initialize a new node project for me. This asks a few questions, and I have options to change a few values here and there. So I want the name of the project to be Reddit clone, version to be 1.0. I don't want to put any description right now. I want the first file or entry point to be index.js. So index.js is the JavaScript file that I want to run. I don't have testing requirements right now, and I do not have a Git repository at this moment. And keywords, I'll put Reddit as a keyword, and I'll put my name as the author. And license, I'll leave it as default. What this is going to do is this is going to create a manifest file or a file that describes the project. So this is a file which is in a format called the JSON format. JSON format is a simple dictionary format in which you have the name and a value. So we also call this as key value pairs, where on the left side we have the key and on the right side we have the value. Okay. So for me, all of this sounds okay. So I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to say press enter, and I'm going to open. Okay, so this created a new window for me, so I'll close the previous window. Now this is going to ask me whether I trust the authors. So since I'm the author, I'm going to trust. So this is the first file that was created for us with all of the values that we saw on the command line on the previous screen. So uh, the first file that Node.js is going to look for here is index.js. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file, and I'm going to call it as index.js. Okay. So our purpose here is to now create an HTTP server, right? So to create an HTTP server, we are going to basically need okay, yeah. So we don't really need any library or anything as such. We can create a simple HTTP server uh, by using this code. Okay. So HTTP is a library that comes bundled along with Node.js. So we basically can create a server using the HTTP library without having to install an external library. Now, to create a server, we will say HTTP dot create server. Okay, this is going to create a server for us, and we can basically have all of our configurations within our create server. And now I can say that this server should listen to a port number. So I'm going to put it as 8080. Okay. So this is the most straightforward way of creating a server. We are initializing the HTTP module, which is a library for creating an HTTP server, and what we can do now is when the server has been created, we can actually pass on something called as the callback. So this is a function which is going to run once the which is going to run whenever we make a request. So if I'm going to request the server to give me users or give me posts, then this is the function that will run. Now over here, what we can do is we can say that for any request that is coming in, I want the status code to be 200. So 200 is a successful HTTP response. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to return hello world into any request that comes to us. Okay, now I want to set the type of the content, which is set by using an HTTP header. So in an HTTP request, we have the status code, we have the header, and we have the body. So the header is basically going to explain things about the body. So, for example, I want to say that the content that I'm returning is just a plain text. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to define within the header that the browser or anything that is making this request should understand that the request coming to them is a plain text. I mean, a response that is coming to them is in plain text. And then I can uh, end the response, which means that this is the final function I'm calling, after which it is going to send the response back. And I can say hello world. Okay. So what I can do now is I can start the command line and I can run node, which is the node.js runtime, and the file name index.js. Okay. So I actually already have a server running, so I'm going to stop that server. Okay. So I have run node index.js, and now the server has started. Over here, we are not getting any indication as to the server being started. So for that, what we can do is we can give a callback function here. So this second item is going to be a function that will run once the server has successfully started. So I can log into my console that the server is running at this port. Okay. So since I have made changes into my code, I'm going to stop the server and I'm going to start it again. So what you see is now that I've started the server, it is giving me an indication that the server has started. So this is something that we can leverage from using callback functions. Now this is a very simple server, and what we need is basically APIs to handle user authentication, to create posts, to create comments, to edit comments or edit posts. We want to delete them. So there's a lot of things that we want to do. And over here, what we will need to do is we are going to have to uh, put a lot of if-else cases. So if this is the request, then do this. If this is being asked for, then do that. There's a lot of that we'll have to do, because for now, this function is going to run for every request that I make. So on a different terminal now, I'm going to run a command called curl. So curl is a command which we can use to make an HTTP request. So it is very similar to a browser, but it's on the command line. Okay. So if I make a call to localhost 8080, then I'm getting a response of hello world. Now, if I want some more information about the request, I can put a -i flag, and this flag is going to give me response headers along with my response body. So in the response headers, I'm getting a 200, which means okay, which means that the request was successfully resolved. The type of the content which I have set over here is coming to be, and the date at which the response was sent, and there is a header which asks the client to keep the connection alive. So whenever we make a new HTTP request, the connection needs to be established between my local and the server, right? So this connection, what the server is requesting us to do is, so Naman, I means information. So what this means is, so when a request is completed, we basically terminate the connection. We don't keep the connection to the server. And if we have to make another request, then we create a new connection. So this connection is a long process where there is a request sent from the client to the server, and there is a handshake that happens from the server to the client, and then the client passes on some more information. So there's a lot of to and fro that happens between the client and the server. What this means is, basically we want to keep the connection alive and not terminate the connection, and we want to be able to do multiple requests within one single connection, so that we can save on the time required to build and rebuild connections, and that also translates into faster speeds of responses. Keep alive timeout is 5, which means that the connection should be kept alive for at most 5 seconds. Content length is 12, which gives our client the marker as to how many characters is the content for. So this is 12 characters long, which means that my application knows that it has to read the first 12 characters, and it's done after that. And then hello world is the body. So these are all the headers. This is the HTTP message, which says that HTTP version 1.1 is being used, and the response is 200, which is also okay. Now, this is good for simple servers, but as our requirements get complex, running a server using this code is going to get more and more complicated, which is why we have a library called as Express.js. So Express.js is basically a library that helps us create HTTP servers with Node.js in a much simpler manner. Now, this is an external library, which means it needs to be installed externally. So to install, what we are going to do is we will first stop our server, and we are going to run npm install express. Okay. So what happens here is node npm is going to create a dependencies dictionary, within which it is putting the name of the library and the version that needs to be used, and it is creating a package lock, which is basically a snapshot of all of the dependencies that were installed on your machine at this instant. Okay, and then there is a node modules folder, which basically is a folder that is going to handle all of our libraries. So all of our library code resides here. We can see that there is an express folder here. Now, express has other dependencies, so even those are installed, and this happens until all of the dependencies required by everyone is available. Okay. So now that we have Express, we can now start. So I'm going to put this code on the chat and I'm going to remove this now. Okay. So this is for creating simple HTTP servers without the use of any libraries. And now we are going to use Express. So we're going to uh, call the library Express, and we are going to create something called as app. So if I call Express, it creates an application for me, and in this application, I can write various rules for how the server should react to various requests. Okay, so just like the HTTP server that I created with Node.js, I'm going to say app listen, and I'm going to give it a port number 8080. Okay, and when the server starts, I want to run a function which console logs that the server is running on port 8080. Okay, and so this actually starts my server, but it is not going to handle any requests. So let's see what that looks like. So server is started, but if I make a request, I'm going to get a 404 not found because I have not written any rule for this particular URL. So within Express, what we do is we write certain rules. Okay. So we can, for example, write app dot and then the method HTTP method that is being used, and suppose I want to create an API for user registrations. So what I'll do is I will say app dot post. So this is going to be my post request. I'm going to say slash register, and with this I've registered. I've basically implemented an endpoint for register. What I need to do next is run a function which is going to run whenever a request for register is asked for. Okay, so now I will say function. I will give it a name. This can be a random name. Okay, and I'll have the request and response. Okay. So in this function, the request contains all of the data that is coming from the request. Okay. And response is going to contain the data for the response that goes out. Okay. Now on the register endpoint now, I can do something like response status 201, and I can return a JSON. Okay, so now I've made changes. I need to restart the server. Now, if I'm making a request to this, I'll still get a not found. But if I make a request to register, then I'm going to get a okay. This is because I've not mentioned post. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to mention the method by using the -x parameter. So -x parameter in curl means the method. So if I post, then the post request for this is matched, which means I'm going to get a 201 created, which is what I'm sending as a response here. And I'm getting a JSON that has been returned here. Okay. So now I can add as many rules as I want. So I can also have post for login, which does basically the same thing. So I'm going to uh, fill these in later. Okay, so I have this. So I would now want an API for log out. So over here I can just give an empty response. So if for example the logout was successful, I can just send an empty response saying that logout was successful. Okay, and I can send the ID of a newly logged in user, or I can also send it when the user has registered, right? So these are the rules that I can write, and I can keep on writing as many rules as I want. Now, Express is going to match the URLs according to what I am putting, and once it finds a match against the header, I mean against the method and the URL, then it is going to run the function for that particular uh, configuration. So, is everything clear up to this point? Okay. So now that we have the server and we are able to make a request, get a response, what we are now going to do is we are going to set up the database. Okay. So for the database now, we are using MongoDB Compass in our machines, but what we want is a library that is going to help us with, first of all, creating a MongoDB connection, and second of all, helping us with all the communication that is required. So MongoDB basically works on queries. So I will have some data, and I'm going to need to run queries, which is going to filter the data and then give it to me. And now I can use this data to power my APIs. And then the data from my APIs is going to help me build the UI. So that is the flow here. Now MongoDB requires queries. So we need an engine that is going to uh, take the query from us. It is going to translate that into what MongoDB understands and then get the data back. Okay. So let me add some sample data here so that it's easy to understand. Okay. So I'm creating a user here. So I'm going to say that the username is Pranjal, and the password is something that is encrypted. Okay, and I can have more fields, but let's just do with this for now. Okay, so I now have a record which has some ID. Now, an ID is basically the thing that identifies documents. So if I create 5 documents here, all of them will have all of them will have a different ID. Okay, so let me add another document. Let's say over here. I'm creating another document. So there are 2 documents. Both of them have different IDs, and basically that is how we know that they're different documents. Now, what I can do is I can first of all, so I need to first connect to my database. So I'm going to say connect application. Okay, it's not connect, actually it is use. So use application is going to now switch the database to application. So now my primary database here is application. Now I can be connected to one database at a time. Okay, uh, using one engine. So now what I can do is db, which is now pointing to application. I can say db dot users. Okay. Now I can write a find query. Okay. Within the find query, I'm going to give an empty dictionary. So this is the place where we can add more conditions. Now I want to find all of the users, and I'm not going to put a condition now. I will put this in a bit. So what this has done for me, it has brought out two documents that satisfy the condition. So there are a total of two documents, and I have not put any conditions. So two documents are satisfying the condition. Now I can be a bit more granular on this. I can say db dot users dot find one. Okay. Now find one is going to find the first item that matches the condition. Now, if there are more than one item that matches the condition, it is going to return the first one. Okay, so it returns the first one. Now, if I say that username is tutored, then it is going to return that document instead. I can do the same thing with find as well. Okay, and find is also going to give me the same thing. Now find one and find will look similar here, but when we use drivers, so just like you need a driver to uh, run a peripheral in your computer, you need a driver to run the database in your express application, right? So the driver basically treats both of these as different. So for this, it is going to consider it as a list. For this, it is going to consider it as one single item. And we are going to take a look at how that matters in a little bit. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to uh, set up the database in my Express.js application, and I want to start registering users. So for now, I'm going to delete both of these documents, and I'm going to create these documents through the application. Okay, so we have Express installed. Now the next thing that going to do is we are going to use a library called Mongoose. Now there are two ways to do this. We can either use the MongoDB library for Node.js that is available, which is a more lower level library. With Mongoose, we get a lot of safety features where MongoDB does not require you to have a shape or structure, but with Mongoose, what we can do is we can set up some shape and structure so that all of the data that we insert are actually consistent. So we do get the flexibility, but we want some of the things to be consistent. Like if we are talking about the collection of users, we want all of them to have the username field and the password field. Okay, we don't want them to not have any of these fields, because then our application will not work. So there are those safety features that Mongoose gives to us, which is not available in MongoDB. And with Mongoose, we have a lot of you know convenience features which converts our configuration into MongoDB query. If we do not use Mongoose, then we are going to have to write the MongoDB queries by ourselves. So to install this, we are going to run mongoose npm install mongoose. Now this is similar to how we have installed Express. Okay, so mongoose is going to get installed now. Now the first thing that we need is to connect to the database. So for that, I'm going to keep it separate from my index file. I'm going to create a uh, file for database. So all of my database stuff will stay here. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to simply write connect, and within this, so this will be an asynchronous function because it is dealing with an external party. So this application is running on my machine and the server is running in Mumbai. We have just initialized a MongoDB server. So what this has to do is it has to make the connection, and when the connection is successful, then it has to move forward. And that is where we use async functions. So over here, I want to await for Mongoose Connect. So for that, I'm going to require Mongoose, and I'm going to have to put the connection string that I had put earlier. So let me see if I can get it back. I think I'm going to have to disconnect. Okay. So this is my connection string. So I'm going to put that here. And once the connection is successful, I'm going to say connected to database. Okay. And now I'm going to export this connect function. So this file is basically a module. We are going to use this just like we use other libraries. So for example, Express gives us a function. HTTP gave us functions like create server and listen. So similarly, this DB is a module which gives us access to this function connect. Whenever we are going to call connect, it is going to uh, run this function. Okay. And now I want to do that whenever I'm starting the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call connect. Actually, I will name this as connect to database. Actually, I'll leave it as it is. And I'm going to say require this file called db.js. So if I specify a path here, it is going to look for that file locally. If I do not specify a path, then it will look for that in the node modules folder. So I'll do this, and I'm going to say db.connect. And I need to await for this because this connect is an async function. Okay. So now if I start the server, it is saying that the database connection was successful and the server is now running on port 80. So From my Express application, I'm able to connect to my database. Now, the next step here is to define the shape of my data. Okay. Uh, Swapnil, should I zoom in this one more? Are the zoom levels okay, or should I zoom in more for all of you? Okay. So, what we are going to do is we are going to create schemas. So, a schema is basically a manifest of how collection should behave. So, like a particular collection should only allow a document if it satisfies these fields. So, we are going to kind of set all of the fields that are required, and we are going to put in some conditions like this should be unique, there should not be any other document with this username, etc. So we are going to define those things. So for the user, I'm going to say user schema, and I'm going to say mongoose.schema. So schema is something that is provided to us by Mongoose. It is not a part of MongoDB because MongoDB does not work with schemas. But with Mongoose, we are going to get some benefits that we will be able to see in a little bit. So um, we are going to say that. So instead of email, I'm just going to keep it as username. I do not want to put email restrictions here. So I'm going to say that the type of this will be a string. So I can have multiple types, like I can have a number, a boolean, a string. These are the types that are supported. So I want to mention that the username is required. So if I'm creating a document, the document should not, the document is not valid if it does not have a username. Because if I'm registering a user, I need their username and password, and more so when I'm logging them in. I need to compare usernames, and which is why the username should be available, and it should be unique as well. So, uh, if I already have a user called Pranjal, I should not be able to create another user called Pranjal. Now, with MongoDB, this would have been possible. With Mongoose, we can put these conditions in place. Okay. Now, I want to also trim. So trim is basically handling where any white spaces at the beginning or the end will be removed. So if, for example, I'm typing with my phone and after Pranjal it leaves a space in the input box, then what Mongoose will do is it will remove that extra space so that just the text Pranjal is saved into the database. Okay. And I want the username to be at least 3 characters long. I don't want 1 character or 2 character usernames. And I want to put the max length to 64. So I don't want someone to have a username that is more than 64 characters long. Now, these are arbitrary values. You can put it according to your requirements. And what I'm trying to show here is how you can define certain fields that are going to help you with doing some validations. So, for example, for password, I'm using a similar set of things. So, I'm going to save it as a string. I'm going to say that password is required. It should be at least 8 characters long. It should have maximum of 64 characters. Okay. So with this, I will be able to get a table with all of the users, but I also want to save a few more things like when was the first sign up done, or when was the record created, and when was the record updated. So if I update my username, I should also have uh, the log to, I mean the log of when it was updated. So I can put timestamps to true. So this is going to create four fields for me: username, password, created at, and updated at. And this is very convenient for us because we don't have to handle how to do created at, or how to put created at, updated at. We don't need to go through the hassle of changing the updated at whenever this changes. I don't have to go through the hassle of checking whether the username already exists. So throwing an error that is already handled by Mongoose for me. Uh, I don't have to do conditions like if the username is not available, then throw an error. If the length is smaller than this, bigger than this, then throw an error. So all of those things are handled by Mongoose for me. If I would have used the MongoDB library, then I would have had to do all of these things by myself, and more so in multiple places. But the Mongo schema is a single source of truth for everything that we have to do with the users collection. Okay. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to say users as Mongoose model user. Okay, so with user, now I have defined that the name of the model. So this is a model name which is internally maintained by Mongoose. It has nothing to do with MongoDB. It's just something that is used inside of Mongoose. So this is helpful for identifying collections and make references, which we are going to understand when we have the schema for posts. So we have the schema for users ready, and we have exported that as well. So now I can do db.users anywhere in my application and I can access this. So let me go ahead and uh, finish the register. So is everything clear on the, okay. Uh, So, Abhishek, let me talk a little bit about design. So, as I had mentioned that there's going to be two collections, the users and the posts. What we are doing here is we are first exploring all of the database constructs and APIs for users, and then we are going to do the same for posts. The users is simple. It will have a username and a password. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to create models which define what a user should look like so that it can be saved and retrieved from the database. Does that help? Okay. So what we are going to do now is we are going to uh, implement the register. So within register, I need to check whether the username and password have been provided, and when they have been provided, I'm going to put them into the database and then return a success response. Okay, so let's get started with that. Now there are various ways in which we can send data to the server. So sending data now requires us to first have an understanding of the format. So the client is going to send data in a particular format, and the server is going to receive that data and read it in that format. So there needs to be an understanding between the client and the server as to what format to use. Now, the most commonly used format here is the JSON format, and that is something that we are going to use here. So, Express as a library gives us something called as the express.json middleware. So, I can use a middleware function. Now, a middleware function is a function that sits in between the incoming request and the handler. So this is the function which is called as the handler. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to be able to uh, parse the request that has come from the client, and I want this function to be able to read that data. So that is why what I want to do is I want to put express.json in the middle. So let me start off here and then I will explain what is the app.use directive. So whenever I am writing a rule, the very first parameter is the path, and then all the other parameters are about middleware functions, or what are the functions that should be run in the middle. So express.json here is the first middleware function which is going to read a JSON request, and it is going to put that as objects or variables for the next function to use. So when the user makes a request, they have given a JSON body. Express.json is going to convert that JSON body into objects that can be read easily, and then it is going to forward that request to the next function. Now, if I have another function here, say do something here, the same principle applies. Do something is going to take the input from express.json, process it, and then forward the request into the next function. So we can chain as many middlewares as we want here. So express.json is going to only work when the content type inside of our request is set to application JSON, which means that we are specifying that the body is going to send some JSON messages. So once express.json runs, we get all of our data into something called as the request.body. Okay, so request.body.username and password is what we will get from our register API. So what we can do is we can put checks here. So we can say if so we are going to check for an invert condition here. What we want to actually do is we want to fail the request if either the username or the password was not provided. So we can do if either username was not provided or password was not provided, then I want to send a response with the status code of 400 and a message that username and password are both required for this request to be successful. Okay. Now, this if condition gives me a guarantee that just because there is a return written here, if the if condition did not execute, that means we have both request body username and request body password. So both the data is available to us, because even if one of the points would not be available, then this return would have been triggered and I would not have come to this point in the code. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if the user already exists. Actually, I don't need to do that because Mongoose is taking care of that. So what I want to do is db.users. Okay. Now, when I do db.users, I have to actually put a new keyword here because I'm creating a new instance of db. Okay. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new document with the username and the password, and created at and updated at will be put in automatically. So this is going to now go to the users collection, create this document for me, and it is going to return the contents of that document to me. Okay, so this is what I want to do, and if there are other steps that I would have required, I could have done that. But at the very final step, what I want to do is I want to save the user into the database. So saving is going to require a call to the database server, and so this is an async process. So I have to declare this function as an async function for me to be able to await on this. Okay. Now, once the user has been saved, I can kind of return a response with a status of 201, and I can say that the user was created. Here is the user ID. Okay. So now I have the register API complete. I can restart the server and I can try running register again. So if I run register here, what do you think is going to happen? Will it be a successful API call, or will it give an error? Okay, yes, that's exactly right. It is going to give a 400 error because we require the username and the password. So to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to add. So we have the register URL, we have the method of post. What I want to do now is I want to declare that the body of the request is going to be of type application JSON, which means that the server is now going to understand that uh, JSON body is coming in and it needs to be parsed. So express.json middleware here is going to take the request, take out the body, parse the JSON, put it into request.body object, and it is going to forward it to the next function, which is this handler. Now this handler already has username and password within the request body, so it can execute. Okay, and then I need to pass in data with this JSON. Inside the JSON, I will say that the username is Pranjal, password is something. Now if I press enter here, it is going to give me a 201 created, which means that the API was successful and I'm getting my user ID returned to me. Now let's look at Compass. Let me connect. I will go to application and users, and okay, I think it did not go to the application database. It went to a different database. It went to a test database, which is like the default. So this is because I have not particularly selected application as my database, and that is something that I have to do in my connection string. So in the connection string, The first part is the protocol. The second part is the username. Third part is the password. Fourth part is the host name. And then the fifth part is going to be the name of the database. So let me restart the server, and I'm going to delete the test database because I don't need it. Okay, I cannot delete the test database. I will just drop the collection. Okay. So now I will register once again, and it should now come to the application database into the users collection. So let me run that again, and it got created. If I reload this, you will see that within application users, a new document got created. The username was created, the password was created, and then the creation and updation timestamps have been created. So whenever I edit this document, the updated rate will change, but the created rate will stay constant. And this also gives me an idea of when the registration happened. So up until this point, do you have any questions? So Deepak, this video is going to it is recorded and it will be sent to you uh, after the session. Okay. So we are going to take a 10-minute break over here, and we are going to continue with how we can do secure authentication and how we can do posts. And until then, answering all the questions that are coming in. If you want to take a break, you can take it right now. Okay, so um, yeah, so the session should take about 1 or more hour after the break. And so, Amol, we have used the middleware function that is already available to us. After the break, I'm going to show how we can write our own middleware function, which we are going to need in some time, and also how what are the ways in which we can use middleware functions. Deepak, we are going to discuss front end tomorrow. So, connecting to the front end and building the UI is going to happen tomorrow. Okay, Swapnil. So I'll spend 5 minutes on handling errors. So Arman, you can take a look at the documentation for Swagger. Swagger works well with Express. It's simple to integrate. It's not in the scope of this masterclass. So you can take a look at how you can integrate it from the documentation. Amit, yes, we are creating a MERN app. So today's discussion is about MongoDB, Express, and Node, and tomorrow's will be on React. All right. So we'll continue now. We had created the user schema, and this schema was now useful for us while we created the register API. Now, um, within the register API, we have seen the use of uh, middleware, Express JSON. Now I want to also talk about how we can create our own middlewares, which is going to be useful when we create the posts. But before that, I want to cover one more thing. Now, passwords are generally encrypted when it is stored in the server, We do not use plain text passwords because if they get compromised, then we run a risk of the user's credentials going to somewhere else. So what we do is on the front end, we ask the user to put in their plain text password, and on the back end, we are going to encrypt that and save to the server. And every time the user tries to log in, we are going to encrypt that and then match that encrypted value of the password with the value that is placed in the server. So a very popular algorithm for encrypting data is bcrypt. So bcrypt is basically a password hashing function. It creates a hash of the password, which means that for a particular password, it will always generate the same hash. So hash functions are pure functions in a way where uh, if an input is given, like for an input, you will always have a definite output. So even if you run the function 5 times with the same input, you will get the same output 5 times over. So that is where hash functions are useful. And the reason why bcrypt is used from all the other encryption algorithms is bcrypt was specifically made for security vulnerability with other hashing algorithms where bcrypt is slow. So when you hash a password, it is possible to reverse engineer the password by trying out different combinations. So you can run a dictionary attack by trying A and then AB and then a lot of permutations and combinations of characters. So what you can do is, if, for example, the database got compromised and you have encrypted passwords or hashed passwords, what you can do is you can run any of the combinations available of varying sizes, character sets. Like you can use lowercase alphabets, uppercase alphabets, numbers, symbols, and combinations of those. You can hash them and then compare whether those two hashes are matching. If those two hashes are matching, then the source string that you've used is the exact password. So this is how dictionary attacks can be done or brute force attacks can be done to find out the password if you have the hash of someone's uh, user account. So with other hashing algorithms, they are fast enough in a way where these permutations and combinations they can be hashed quickly. So computers can hash hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of combinations in a second. Now that means that you will very soon run out of combinations, and you will hit a match very quickly. So with bcrypt, the entire algorithm is so slow that it increases the time required for you to do a combination attack or a brute force attack. So something that could take minutes or hours with other algorithms will take weeks or months with bcrypt, which is the idea of using bcrypt. So what we are going to do here is during registration, we are going to take the password and we are going to encrypt it with bcrypt, and we are going to save the encrypted password into our database. So before we go ahead with that, I'm going to delete the collection from here, and I'm going to uh, so first we need to install bcrypt. So we will have to do npm install bcrypt. Okay. Once we have this, the next step is to so we are going to have to do this before saving the user to the database. So we need to generate some salt. So salt is basically some random factor that is added to the encryption so that it basically is more cryptographically secure. So if we just do plain password hashing, then it is a bit easier to do a brute force attack. Adding salt adds some randomness to it, so it gets more difficult to do a brute force attack. So we will generate a salt, and then we are going to now create a hash password. So for the hash password, we are going to use the bcrypt.hash function. We are going to give the plain text password and the salt, and both of these things are going to be used to create a hashed password, which we can then put here. Okay. So now doing this, if we try to register once again, we are going to see that we are getting encrypted passwords in the database. So let's try that out. Okay, I have to require bcrypt library here. Okay, let me run it again, and it got created. I'm getting a user ID. So let me take a look at the data now. So my plain text password now was now converted into this bcrypt password. So whenever I have to log in, I can repeat the same process by sending the password to the server, and then the server can encrypt that password, and then it can check whether the two passwords are matching. Okay. So any doubts on encrypting passwords? Okay, so what we've just discussed is encrypting passwords. So encrypting passwords is necessary so that we don't put plain text passwords, which puts us at a risk of the user's accounts getting compromised in case there is a database leak that happens. So for that, what we do is we use an algorithm. This algorithm is bcrypt. This is the one we are using. Now you can choose to use any other algorithm. What I have chosen to do is hash algorithm, which means that this is irreversible. Like once you create a hash out of a password, you cannot create a password out of a hash. And I'm just saving that hash password inside of the database. So to do that, there are two steps involved here. We first need to install bcrypt, and the second step is to create a salt which adds randomness to our algorithm, and then create a hash from the password that was sent to us in the request. Okay. So once that is done, hashed password is now an encrypted string which we can save into the database. So instead of the password that was sent by the user, we are saving the hashed password. Is it clear now? Okay. So we've done this. Now the second part is about uh, the client saving the details. So for example, if a client has or a browser, if a user using a browser has logged in, what I want to do is I want to save that login session for some time so that the user does not have to log in for every request. Okay. So for that to happen, there are two ways in which you can do this. We can either save their session information inside of our database, or we can set them inside of the browser cookie. So saving this inside of our database would mean that on every request we need to make a call to the database and check whether the session is valid and all. So there is all of that involved. And then the other one is to save the details into a user's cookie. Now, I'm going to take this approach, but either approach is correct to implement. The reason I'm taking this approach is it's easier to understand. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set this user's ID into the cookie on successful registration. And if I have to read a request, then what I'll do is I will read this data from the cookie and I will see if the user is a verified user or not. So the first part is saving the data to the cookie. Second part is reading data from the cookie. So if I just put this data into the cookie, then I am running a risk where if someone else gets to know my user ID, they can put my user ID in their cookie, and then they will become logged in with my account, which is a problem. We don't want to do that. So what we are going to do is we are going to use something called as a JWT or JSON Web Token. So JSON Web Token basically is a format of saving information which includes a signature. So a signature is something that only I can do inside of the server, and I can put in any data here, and then I can put my signature on it, and that means that the data is valid against a signature. Now, if the data part changes, then the signature becomes invalid. Or if the signature is invalid, then we know that the data is invalid as well. So for that, like with all of that, what we do is we use JWT to save the information along with the signature. So now, if someone gets hold of my user ID, then you know the best that they can do is they can change my JSON or JWT token, right? So, for example, I'm putting this ID that I received from my okay. So this is the ID that I'm saving inside of my JWT data, and I will put some signature. Let's say that this is my signature. Okay. Now this signature is private to me. Only I know this signature. Okay. So if you have this entire JSON web token and you try to change the ID, for example, my ID is A. Okay. So wait. Okay, this is generating its own token. What I'll do is I'll generate a token and then I'll show it to you here as to how I cannot impersonate anyone else using JWT within my cookies. So the reason this security step is required is because the cookie is available in the user's browser. So the user has access to the cookies, so they can modify the cookie as well. So that is why it is important for us to put safeguards in place so that the data that I have put in is verifiable. So I can verify whether this is the same data that I have put in, and that is where the signature helps. So for the signature, I'm first going to install JSON Web Token as a library here. Okay, and I'm going to let me first set it up and then I will start the server. So I now have the user's details from user.save, so I can access the ID and everything. So user.save is going to go to the database, save the user, and bring back the details of that user to me, and that is how I'm getting the user ID. So what I can do is I can now create a token. So I need to require JSON web token for this to work. So I want to sign. So to sign the JSON web token, I need first of all the data that I want to sign. So I'm going to sign this data. Okay, and I need a secret. Okay, and then there are some other options like when should be the expiry. So I can say 1 hour, which means that the JSON web token should expire in 1 hour, meaning that if I log in, I should get logged out in 1 hour. So that is what is meant over here. So this secret is information that is only inside the server. So no other user can get access to this secret. And that is the reason why no other user can sign just like I can sign, right? And once I have this token, what I can do is I can now set this token into the cookie. So I can say response dot cookie, and I can say auth token. Okay, and under the name of auth token, the cookie of this token value will be saved. And now I have some options. So I can say that the cookie should be HTTP only, meaning that this cookie should not be accessible by the JavaScript inside of the client. So the web application cannot read or write to this cookie. So this can only be read by the server and only be written by the server. Okay, and I can put an expiry here. I can say 60 minutes into 60 seconds into 1000 milliseconds. So this way I can say that this should be valid for 1 hour. And path is a configuration option where I say that this cookie should be available in all of the paths in the web application. So it should be available in slash, it should be available in slash posts, and all the other URLs. So I've now saved the cookie into the user's browser, and this way I can. So since I'm already saving it in the user's browser, I don't want to expose the user's ID. So the user's ID is only available inside of the JSON web token. So now that the code is there, I'm going to explain what is happening. Now, I'll actually repeat once more. So JSON web tokens are basically uh, strings that we save inside of the browser's cookie, and this comes with a signature, meaning that we can verify whether uh, This data is the same data that I had put in earlier. So to sign this, I need to have some unique signature, which is the secret here. Now, this is just the word secret, which is a very simple secret. So I'm going to put a more complicated signature here. But essentially what I'm doing is, once I have the user, I just need to save the ID of that user. So this is the payload that I'm saving here, which is similar to this. So JWT has three parts. It has some metadata or the header. It has the payload or the data that is of concern to me, and it has a signature portion where it is going to encode the header, encode the payload, and also encode my signature. Now, if I'm not able to verify the signature, it means that the uh, string was hampered with. It means that something was taken out or changed inside of the payload. So then I cannot verify whether this signature is my own. So this is where I am signing using JWT with the payload, which is the middle part here. Putting the secret, which is the signature part, and I am giving options like this should expire in 1 hour. And this is also a place where you can use other parameters. So the third parameter is basically the header. Okay, so once I have signed this, I am putting this into the token. This is going to be sent in the response, and the browser will understand that, okay, auth token is the cookie that I have to save. So the browser will automatically save this into the cookie, and it is going to also send this cookie on every other request that goes to the server, right? So the server is able to write to the browser cookie using this, and it is also able to read this cookie value from the browser automatically. And for this, we do not have to write any code on the client side at all. So let's see how that works. So we'll start the server, and I'm going to create another account here because accounts have to be unique. Okay. So it got created, and now you are going to see a new header coming here, which is the set cookie. So set cookie as a header, which when goes to the browser understands that this is a cookie value that it needs to save. So that is what it is going to do. It is going to save this cookie value for this kind of expiry, and for this path, it is going to flag that as HTTP only. So client side JavaScript cannot access this cookie, only server side can access this cookie. Okay, so this is the JWT that got created. Now let me put the JWT here. Okay, so I'm getting the ID that I was saving, the time in which this token was issued, and the time in which it is going to expire. So these are put in Unix timestamps because uh, they take the minimum amount of space to basically be saved. Okay. Now, if I do anything with this data, let's say this is the token for tutor, but I can go ahead and put my ID here. So as you can see, changing the value basically changes the token. And it doesn't just change the pink part of the token, it also changes the blue part of the token. And If the signature doesn't match my previous signature, that means that, so let's say that you try to change the ID here, then whenever I'm verifying this, I will get to know that the data is not the same as what I had sent earlier. So we have only looked at how to create a JWT token. In the next step, we are going to look at how do we use this, or how do we read the JWT token. Okay. So the register API now, it kind of encrypts the password, it creates a user account, it signs a JWT token, and then it sends that token through the cookie. So that is what register does. And a lot of this is going to be the same in login as well, where the only process that we don't do is create a new user, but the rest of the process is the same. So let me actually finish login as well. So I'm going to put the same condition here. I'm going to put the same handling to hash a password. Actually, I don't need to hash a password. Bcrypt comes up with a function called compare. So I can say that the password that was provided by the user and the password that is there in the database are these the same. So this is an expensive operation, hence this is asynchronous. So I have to declare this function as asynchronous as well. Okay. So valid password now tells me whether the password is valid or not. So I can put an if condition here. So if the password is not valid, I can give a 401 error code with a JSON saying that the password is invalid. Okay. Now, if this condition did not go through, then this return did not go through, which means at this point under the if statement, the password is valid. So what I can do is I can do the same thing here. I can sign the token, okay, and I can send it to the response. So with this, basically, I've been able to verify the password by using bcrypt compare, and I'm using the same process as register. So either you create an account or log into your existing account, the process will be the same. It is going to create a token and then save it to your cookie. So now, if I use my account, Pranjal, but I use login instead of register, I will get a success. So I actually should, okay, so I made a change, but I did not restart the server. So login is okay. So this is happening because I need to have the express JSON middleware here. So I'm sending a JSON body into the server, and the server now needs to know that it needs to be able to read and parse JSON. So let me restart the server. Okay. So the user field that I'm using here is not defined. So basically, I need to find out the user whose username matches the username that has been given. So this is the two-step process. I have to find the user with the username and I have to compare the passwords. So I will use the find one here so that I get exactly one user whose username matches this. And I'm going to always get one because username is unique. So this is for finding the user. Now, if the user does not exist, if I've given an incorrect username, then I can go ahead and say that 401 this username does not exist. So let me try this again, and I'm getting the response, and I'm getting this JWT token, which will be saved into my cookie. Okay. So, any questions on encrypting the password and saving tokens into the cookie or JWT? Okay. So we have implemented register and login, and let's implement it. So Blowfish is basically a choice. You can use any algorithm, and yeah, for the sake of simplicity here, I have used that. So JWT is JSON Web Tokens, which is basically a format of saving data uh, that contains a signature. So it ensures that if I'm setting some data once, uh, I can make sure that the next time I'm receiving that data, I can verify if that is the data that I have written because it has my signature on it. So a whole cookie is a feature in the browser where we can save some information that is persisted even if we close the browser. So if we close the browser and open it again, then everything else gets erased, but the cookie is there. So for example, if you're logging in and then closing the browser and then opening the browser again, then the cookie stays, so your login session will remain. Okay, is that clear? Now there is another property where just like server is going to send a set cookie header, the client is also going to send a cookie header. So if you have used a set cookie from the server to the browser, all of the requests after that from the browser will come with a cookie header. And that cookie header will actually give you the value of previously stored cookie, right? So what we can do now is so I'm going to collapse register and login so there's more space to work. Now for the logout, it's very simple. I just need to clear the cookie auth token that has been put. So what this is going to do is it is going to set the cookie to uh, blank. So that gets saved into the browser. So the token is essentially deleted from the browser because it has been set to blank. So let's run logout. Actually, for logout, we have to use this. So this is the same cookie that was sent on the previous request. I'm now sending it back to the server. So I can do that inside of the curl command using the cookie flag. So with this, now I'm sending the cookie to the server, and the server can now read this value in the cookie and do something with it. So now if I press enter, it gives me a 201, and okay, strangely enough, it did not give a set cookie header. Okay. Uh, I'll need to see why this did not give us a cookie header. So basically, the expectation was that it would give a set cookie header with auth token as blank and expires as a past date. So in a browser, if you set the expires as a past date, then that cookie gets deleted from the browser. So that is what should have happened, but it did not happen. So I will have to look at this. Okay, I did not restart the server. That's why that happened. So yes, now we have this set cookie is setting auth token to blank. It is setting expires to a past date, which is like 1970 January. So when the browser receives a past date in the cookie, it is going to delete the cookie, and even the value has been set to blank. So this way, I have essentially cleared the cookie inside of the user's browser from my server. Uh, is everything clear? So Mega Package JSON is the manifest file for a Node.js project. It contains all of the essential details about the project, like the name, version, the main file, and the dependencies or packages uh, that our application is dependent on, the author, etc. Okay, so we now have register, login, and log out. All of these implemented. Now, the first thing that I want to implement is uh, creating a post. So, to create a post, now we need to go back here and we need to create a schema for posts. So, let's go ahead and do that. So, in the post, I want the content of the post. So, if you look at this, so I have a user who is the author of the post. I have the content of the post, the timing, whether or not it is edited. So these are the things that I need for a post. So content is going to help me with this portion, the content of the post, and it is required. So there cannot be a blank post, and it is of type string. It should have minimum 1 character and a maximum of 280 characters. So it is very much like a tweet. Now it should have an author. Now author is of type object ID, which is different. Now object ID is the type that is used for unique identifiers like this one. So what I want to mention here is that this should be a type that references another type or another value in a different document. So I have a user document. I want the author to reference to the field of ID from the document of the user. So uh, the content should be a string and the author should be a reference to a document in the user's collection, and it is required. So we cannot have a post without an author. And I want timestamps so that I get the created at and the updated at. So when I get those, I can do things like I can say that 5 minutes ago is when it was created at, and if the created at and updated at are not the same, because when a new document is created, the created at time and the updated at time are identical because that is the time when it was created. But if I have made any changes, then the updated ad changes, but the created ad stays the same. So if both of them are not equal, that means that the post was edited at some point. So I can use that information to show this. Okay. So for that, I will use timestamps equals to true that I have used in the users table as well. So with this, basically, I will expose posts as a mongoose model post. So now I can do db.posts just like I have been able to do db.users. So now I can create an API called app.get posts. So over here I will have the async function to get all the posts, and this is going to just run db.post.find, and if I'm getting the post, then I can return the JSON response. So to do this, I will have to do curl-i localhost 8080/posts. So get is the default method, so I don't have to specify get, and I don't have anything else to send. So I have to actually restart the server. So with this, I have gotten an empty response because there are no posts as of now. Okay, and if I go to application and refresh, I can see that the post collection was created by mongoose, but it's empty right now. So let's now create an API to add a post. Now, to add a post, I need the author, right? I need the author reference. So that means that I need the user to be authenticated. So I'll first define the endpoint. Okay, so creating a post also requires client to send data to the server, and we've seen this in register and login, where the client needs to send data. So the client sends data in a JSON format, and every time we have to run the express JSON middleware. So there is a shortcut to this, where instead of writing this middleware everywhere, we can use something called as the app.use. So app.use is a function which uses a middleware, which means that express.json is going to run before every endpoint that is created. So it is going to run before register, before login, logout, before get post, before post posts. So it is going to run before every request. Now, if in any request the content type was found to be application JSON, then what express.json will do is it will take the body, parse it into JSON, and move the request forward to the next function like this. So now within posts, I don't have to write express JSON again because that middleware is already applied. So now I can directly do checks on content. So content is important, and along with the content, I also need the cookie. So okay, there seems to be a problem. My screen is frozen. Amol, there is no app.json. Are you talking about package JSON? What I can do here is from the request, I can take the token as well. So auth token is the name with which I have saved the cookie, and auth token is the name with which I will read the cookie again. Okay. So I need the content, and I also need the token. So I can say that if the token is not available in the cookie, that means that the user is not logged in, because a logged in user will always send the token as a cookie. Okay. So now that I have the token, I need to verify whether this token is correct or not. So what I'm going to do is use the secret, which is my signature, once again. So within register, I had signed it earlier with this secret. Now I want to verify whether the data is proper along with my signature. So if it is proper, then I can understand that it is verified. If it is not, then it is not verified. Okay. So now the decoded message is going to have the ID, because that is what I had signed earlier. So this is what I had signed earlier, and this is what I will get back. So I can now use decoded.id. So now I can find out whether this user with this ID exists. Okay, and if the user does not exist, then the user ID is invalid, right? And if the user does exist, then I can move forward. So now I can create a new post. So the user that has come up, it will give me an underscore ID, which is the object ID here. So I can use that here. And I just need the content and the author. That will be all for me to create a post. And since I have all of that, I can call post.save and I can return that the post was created and I can give the post ID. Okay, so let me repeat the whole process once again. So I am creating an API now to create a post. To create a post, I need to first I need to first verify whether this is a proper user. For that, I'm going to take the token out of the cookie. I'm going to check if the token is available in the cookie. Uh, I'm also going to check if the content has been sent along with the request body. If those are not there, then we cannot go ahead with creating a post because both of these things are required. Once these things are available, we can verify whether the JWT is correct. So when I write the JWT, I use a signature. When I read the JWT, I use the same signature to verify whether this was written from me. If it has not been written from me, then the signature will mismatch. Then I'm just checking whether this user exists in our database. If the user exists, then fine. If it doesn't exist, then I will see that the value is invalid because the user does not exist. Then I'll go ahead and create a post along with the details I have. So I already have the ID of the user. So I have taken the I've already downloaded the document for the user. That document has the ID. I can put that ID here. So this will create a connection between the post and the user. So this way I can make sure that this post belongs to this user. So I will save the post and return a response. And now let us see this in action. So to create a post, I would have to so I will have to provide the content which is required, request.body.content and the cookie auth token which is also required. So okay, I need to restart the server actually. Okay, so there is one thing I have missed here. So to read cookies, just like to read JSON, we need JSON middleware. To read cookies, we need a cookies middleware. So this cookie middleware is called as the cookie parser. So cookie parser is another middleware which will read the cookie and then it will put it to request.cookies. So we need to install that actually. So now I will have to require cookie parser and I can use cookie parser on all middlewares. Now it is up to you whether you want to use it on particular middlewares or all middleware. So uh, that is something that you can take a look at. Now app.use cookie parser is now going to help me take values from the cookie and put it to request.cookies. So let me restart the server and run this again. So the post was created and I have been given an ID. So I can now go to posts and see that my first post has been uh, created, and this author was referenced to an object ID which is this one. Now I can take this object ID and I can see whether dv.users.find one with ID as object ID, and you will see that the username is Pranjal here. So this is my post, and that is how uh, the document of post is connected to the document of user. Okay. Uh, so with this, we have created a post and we have basically created an API to get all posts. So now that we have one post, if I call the get posts API again, so this is the API to get all posts. I will receive data here. I was previously receiving null or empty array. So if you see, we are getting the ID, content, author, and created at and updated at, which can be used in the UI. So, any questions on getting a post and creating a post? Okay. So now I will take up the last topic, which was about creating our own middlewares. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, so a middleware is basically a reusable logic that we can run on multiple endpoints without having to copy paste code. So um, this part of checking for token from the cookies. This can be used in other places as well. For example, if I want to create an endpoint for editing a post or deleting a post, then I'll again have to check whether the user is authenticated, because I'm allowing users to see all the posts without authentication, but I actually need them to be authenticated to create, edit, or delete the post. So what I can do is I can move all of this logic into a function. So let me write that function here and then I will move it to. So this is how you write a middleware. You can put in any name into it, and it gets two parameters, request and response. And it works the same way, uh, but it has one more parameter, which is called as the next. So next is the function which passes on things to the next function. Okay. So I'm now going to no. I'm now going to move all of these things into this function. So reading the token, checking the token, verifying, checking if the user exists. Okay. So this needs to be async because there is a database function here which is required. Now, what I want to do is I want to give access to the user here because as you can see, user is being used here, but I'm moving everything here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put uh, user into request. So once the GWT has been verified and the user is available, I can just simply say request.user is equal to this user. So now I can simply take the user from request. I don't need to have a local variable here. And once this is done, I can call next. So next says that this middleware was successful. It can forward the request to the next function. Okay. So I've written the middleware. To apply this middleware, we are going to do the same thing as we had done for Express.json. We are going to put this in the middle of the user's request and our handler function. So now what is happening is when the user is making a request with post, is authenticated will run first. Okay, it will have access to request and response, and it will do all of this stuff. And if everything is successful, it will call the next function, and the next function is basically this function. Okay. So and if there is a failure, then I can, for example, there is a failure here and there is a failure here, right? So I can directly send a response from there, so it is not going to move forward to the next function. So if, for example, I am not providing a value of the cookie, then this request is going to exit right here with a status code of 401. It is not going to execute the create post function. And if everything is okay, then next function is called and it is going to execute the create post function. So is that clear? So now this function I can put it anywhere else. For example, I can put it into a folder called middlewares, and I can say auth.js. So this basically has the auth functions, and then I can module exports is authenticated here. And just like how I'm importing DB, I can import is authenticated from the middleware slash auth. So let's see this in action. We'll restart the server. Okay, it is middlewares plural. So now if I create a post, I will say that this is my second post. Okay, I have two import JWT inside that file. I think that is the only variable being used. Library. Yeah, that is the only library being used. So let me restart the server. Okay, I also need DB inside this, so I will require DB here. So just like that, it got created with the ID of this, and I can verify this by making a call to get. The response that I'm getting here is from the same author. Okay, so this is basically how we can write a middleware function, just like all the other functions, request and response. The only change being the next function. So if I call the next function, it will go to the next function. If I don't call it, then it will not go to the next function. And I can put that here. So um, this is equivalent to express JSON being put because I was putting it up there, cookie parser being put, and then is authenticated being put, right? So this is how we can chain multiple middlewares. Each is going to do something and then move to the next one. So app.use is making sure that these are called on every request. So I don't have to do this. Now I can also use app.use with custom middleware. So I can do is authenticated here, but the problem here is it is going to uh, put this middleware into all of the routes. Now I can also filter this by saying that I only want this in the routes which start with posts. So the get and the post functions, these two are going to get this middleware because these are posts. So these will automatically get that middleware through app.use like this. Any questions on this part? Okay, so with this, we have created a user authentication system where we have APIs to register, log in, and log out. We have created a way to uh, get all of the list of posts and also create a post. Now we are going to wrap it up here, and in the next session, we are going to uh, use front end to basically read data from all of these APIs and then show content on the screen. So that is all for today. If you have any questions, you can ask them here. If you don't have any questions, then you're free to leave. All of this code is going to be uploaded to GitHub and shared along with the recordings at the end of the session. So for those who are leaving, thank you for joining today. And yeah, it was nice having all of you. So Deepak, you can learn about various things in backend like databases. So you can search about MongoDB and understand how we can do things in MongoDB. There are SQL databases as well, which is a little bit different in a way that it is structured and not very much free like MongoDB. Uh, it has a lot of extra rules into it. So you can read about how they work. So MySQL is a very commonly used SQL database, and MongoDB is a very commonly used unstructured database. So you can read about both of these. You can read about Node.js, Express, and all of the middlewares that we have discussed today. So if you recall, we have talked about Node.js, Express.js, MongoDB here. We've talked about JSON Web Tokens. We've talked about server-side cookies. We've talked about authentication. So you can take up these topics and you can search for them individually and either watch videos or read blogs on them. All right. So I'm going to leave now. Thank you all of you for joining today and goodbye. See you tomorrow.